In a small town, there was an old, abandoned house that had been the subject of countless eerie rumors. Some said it was haunted by the ghosts of a family who had tragically died there. Others claimed that a malevolent spirit roamed its darkened halls, waiting to trap anyone who dared to enter. A group of curious teenagers decided to explore the abandoned house one night. Armed with flashlights and nerves of steel, or so they thought, they crept up to the creaky front door. The wind howled, and the moon was hidden behind a thick layer of clouds, casting an ominous atmosphere over the place. As they stepped inside, the air turned cold, and a sense of dread washed over them. The old floorboards groaned beneath their weight as they ventured further into the darkness. Strange shadows danced along the walls, and distant whispers seemed to echo through the empty rooms. With every step, the sense of unease intensified. Yet, they pressed on, drawn deeper into the heart of the house. Suddenly, they heard a blood-curdling scream that seemed to come from the depths of the building. Panic set in, and the group scattered in all directions, desperate to escape. One by one, they ran outside, their hearts pounding, gasping for breath. As they regrouped under the pale moonlight, they realized one of their friends was missing. They called out his name, but there was no answer. Reluctantly, they decided to go back in to search for him. This time, they were met with an eerie silence. The house felt strangely different, as if the very walls were watching them. In a room upstairs, they found their missing friend, sitting on the floor, his eyes wide with terror. He could barely speak, but he managed to utter a few haunting words. "It's not just ghosts in here. Something else is here with us." Before they could react, the door slammed shut, trapping them all inside. Their flashlights flickered and died, leaving them in total darkness. The air grew thick with an otherworldly presence, and they could feel an icy touch on their skin. They huddled together, praying for an escape. The sounds of footsteps echoed around them, but they couldn't see anything. The horrors of the abandoned house closed in on them, and the night seemed to stretch on forever. The group of terrified teenagers huddled together in the darkness, their hearts pounding with fear. They could hear strange noises all around them, whispers, footsteps, and eerie laughter. The air was thick with an otherworldly presence that sent shivers down their spines. As their eyes adjusted to the darkness, they could make out faint outlines of the room they were in. The room was filled with dusty, old furniture, covered in cobwebs and decay. The walls seemed to close in, and the oppressive atmosphere made it difficult to breathe. Suddenly, a cold gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing any remaining hope of escape. They knew they were not alone in this haunted house. Something malevolent was toying with them, relishing in their fear. One of the girls let out a piercing scream as a pale figure emerged from the shadows. It was a woman dressed in tattered clothing, her face twisted in anguish. She glided toward them, her eyes filled with sorrow and rage. The teenagers could feel an overwhelming sadness engulfing them, as if they were experiencing the woman's own despair. "We have to get out of here," one of the boys cried out. They made a desperate dash for the door, but it was no use. The door remained firmly shut, as if held by an invisible force. Panic consumed them as they realized they were trapped, unable to escape the clutches of the haunted house. They wandered through its decrepit halls, each step leading them deeper into darkness. The malevolent presence seemed to grow stronger with every passing moment. In their frantic search for an exit, they stumbled upon a decaying staircase leading to the basement. Despite their apprehension, they felt drawn to explore further. As they descended into the depths of the house, the temperature plummeted, and an eerie silence enveloped them. The basement was a labyrinth of narrow, dimly lit corridors. Strange symbols were etched into the walls, and the air was heavy with a sense of foreboding. It was as if they had entered another realm, disconnected from the world they once knew. They soon realized that the basement was the heart of the haunting. Tormented souls trapped in this place seemed to manifest before their eyes, each with a tragic tale of sorrow and despair. The spirits of the deceased family who once lived in the house appeared, reliving their final moments. Terrified, the teenagers tried to communicate with the spirits, hoping to bring them peace and find a way to escape. But the ghosts were inconsolable, their presence growing more malevolent with each passing moment. In a desperate attempt to break free, they stumbled upon an ancient-looking book lying on a dusty shelf. The book appeared to contain rituals and incantations for banishing malevolent spirits. With trembling hands, they recited the words, hoping for salvation. As they read aloud, the house trembled, and a deafening wail echoed through the corridors. The spirits seemed to fight back, resisting their banishment. The malevolent force that had trapped them intensified, threatening to consume the teenagers' souls. But they persisted, fueled by sheer determination and the flicker of hope. With the final chant, the spirits began to fade away, one by one. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the haunted house began to lose its malevolence. The door that had once imprisoned them now creaked open, inviting them to escape. The teenagers rushed outside, gasping for fresh air and freedom. The morning sun rose on the horizon, bathing the world in light. As they looked back at the abandoned house, they knew they had faced true horror and survived. They had encountered the restless spirits of the past, but in doing so, they had set them free. From that day on, the abandoned house stood empty, its haunting presence gone. The teenagers, forever changed by their harrowing experience, carried the memory of that night with them. They had faced the unknown and emerged stronger, united by a bond forged in fear and survival. And so, the tale of the abandoned house passed into local legend, a cautionary reminder of the darkness that dwells in forgotten places.